Hey everyone, my name is Rochelle Webster and I own Lupululu Pottery Studio here in Cold Lake, Alberta. Today we're going to go over how to hand build a clay gnome. Alright guys, so what you're going to need to get started is a 1 pound ball of clay, a small cup of water, a small paintbrush, a pin tool, and a scoring tool. In this case, because we're not in the studio and you guys are at school, we're going to use skewers. So I've got a single skewer and I've got 3 skewers put together with just a little hair elastic. This tool we're going to use to do some scratching when we are scoring and slipping, but we're going to get into that in a second. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our ball of clay and we're going to section it into 3 pieces. So we're going to cut it in half first. So I'm just going to pinch it around so that it pops off, and then we're going to cut this one not quite in half. I want a bigger part and a smaller part. Same thing, we're just going to pinch it and it's going to come off. Okay, so now we've got a head, we've got a hat, and we've got a nose. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our first piece and we're going to smack it into a circle or a ball. Okay, you can roll around a little bit too, but if we smack it, it pushes all those particles together for us and makes a stronger piece. Okay, it doesn't need to be a perfect round ball, we just need a round ball. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take our thumbs and we're going to push them into the ball. Not all the way through, I'm just kind of going 3/4 of the way through. And now we're going to use our fingers to pinch this into a rounded domed head. So I'm just going to very lightly take my fingers and squish around the ball. Okay, I'm going to do that all over the place. We don't want any really thick places over here and thinner places over here. We want to try to pinch them out pretty easy or evenly. Pardon me. Okay, so it doesn't need to be perfect, but I've kind of got this dome-shaped piece, and that's going to be our gnome's head. All right, the second thing we're going to do is we're going to make a hat for our gnome. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to kind of smack it out, but we're also going to roll it into a carrot. So I'm just going to roll this so that there's a thicker end, and then there's a really tiny end at the bottom. So this part will be the top of our gnome's hat, and this is going to be what fits over top of our gnome's head. So what we're going to do again is you can either use your thumb or one of your fingers, and we're just going to make a hole in there. And now we're going to pinch out the gnome's hat. So same thing, the only thing that we want to keep in mind is a hat is going to go out a little bit differently than our head is going to be. We want to make sure that our gnome's hat fits over top of his head. Okay, take your time with this one. I'm just going to gently go from the top to the bottom so that I'm pinching out the sides of the hat here so that when we do attach it to our gnome's head, it's going to stick in all the right places. We're going to make it stick with our slip. Alright, so fingerprints in your clay are fine. We're going to buff those out after we've got everything attached together. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with how that's turned out. I'm going to stretch it just a little bit more. Okay, I'm happy with that. Right now it doesn't look like very much, so next we need to add a nose. Alright, so we've got a chunk of clay left. I don't need this much for a nose, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half again. I'm going to roll this into a ball, And then we're going to roll it into a carrot again, but not quite as long of a carrot. I'm going to take his nose and I'm just going to roll it out here. And you can just have a cute little button nose if you want to. Okay, just have a little button nose. Or if you really wanted to, we can pinch it a little bit. So it's more of a triangular nose. It's up to you how you want your nose to look, okay? So now we have 3 pieces. We have our head, our hat, and our nose. Now it's time to attach them to one another so that they are one piece. Now, when we are connecting clay to clay, we're going to use a technique called scoring and slipping. And what that means is we're going to take this little tool I gave you guys, we're going to rough the clay up, we're going to make a little bit of mud, which is our slip, and then we're going to smooth them out together so that everybody sticks. Oftentimes when I'm teaching students, I will refer to this as glue or Velcro, just because that's pretty much what we're doing. All right, so I want my nose to go right about here. So I'm just going to draw a straight line, okay? I'm going to take my 3 piece and I'm just going to make a bunch of scribbles on here. Now what we're doing is we're going to score this on this side. We're going to score on this side as well. So both sides are scored under the nose and on top of the head. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow both pieces of clay to join together, okay? So now we're going to take our paintbrush, and we don't want this to be soaking wet, but we want enough water that it kind of makes a little bit of a pasty mud. In the pottery world, we call this slip. Normally I would have a slip made, but water for this instance is going to work just as good. Okay, so now I'm going to put the nose on top of the head and I'm just going to squiggle it around together. Squiggle, squiggle. So what this is doing is it is compressing them together. It's making those 2 pieces come together as one. You can get rid of any clay if you have any left over. Okay, and once I'm done putting them on top of one another, I'm just going to take the clay and I'm going to smooth it out just so these 2 pieces are melded into one piece. Okay. This doesn't have to be pretty because we're putting a hat over top of it. My gnome's nose is a little bit silly, which I love. Okay, so now he's got a nose and a head. Now we have to do the same thing when we're attaching his little hat, okay? But what we need to do is we need to know where that hat is so that we can score and slip that as well. So that's where the single pin tool comes in. I'm going to place the hat on top of his head, and now I'm just going to very gently trace around the hat, and this is going to show me, once I take his hat off, where I need to score. And that way I'm not just running around scoring random pieces, okay? So again, I'm going to take those 3 pieces and I'm just going to rough them up. This does not need to be neat and tidy, this part. Okay, and I'm going to rough up on top of the nose too, because we're going to attach the hat to the nose as well. Okay, so we've done the top of the head. Now we have to score the inside of the hat. All right, so same thing, I'm just gonna take my paintbrush and get rid of any extras that I've created. Again, you don't want to use so much water that you are soaking your clay. Too much water can actually start to break down your clay when you're working with it, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want to have a big pile of mud sitting on our desks. Okay, so now I'm going to take the hat and I'm going to put it back on, and I'm going to gently push that hat into where I scored it. Okay, and then you can pick it up, and same thing, I'm just going to gently pinch those edges together. Okay. Alright, so now this poor guy is a little bit rough around the edges, but now that we've got him put together, this is where we can smooth everything out and start making him pretty. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shape my hat here first. So we want to be gentle with this part. The clay might start to get a little bit dry, and we just don't want to crack pieces off. Okay, so I've crooked my gnome's hat and giving him a little bit of a curlicue at the top there. Alright, so now, in order to get rid of some of these pieces here that look a little bit cracked, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put some water on my fingers, and I'm just going to gently smooth them out. Okay. Very tiny amounts of water, you don't want too much. Alright, so now I've got all those rough edges smoothed out. The next part is making sure anywhere that I've joined the pieces together, they look like one seamless piece. They don't look like we joined those things together. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that paintbrush again, very little amounts of water, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to very gently paint around the edges. And as I do that, the clay is starting to become one. Now, we don't want to smooth it out so much that we can't see the ridges of our hat anymore. We want to just make sure that he's nice and smooth. Decorating these guys, you can most certainly leave them just like this if you don't want to do anything else to them, but you can also add something like a pair of shoes. I'm going to add an earthworm to this guy's hat. You could add some polka dots to his hat. There's a couple different things you can do. The first thing I'm going to start by, because this is just a little goofy and sometimes I really like goofy, is I'm going to give him nostrils. So now he's a silly gnome because he has nostrils. Okay? So I've got a little bit of clay left over, so let's make him a pair of boots. So I'm going to need 2 little pieces of clay and a worm. Alright, to start off with shoes, I'm going to take 2 pieces that are hopefully equal, or as close as possible, and I'm going to round them up in my hands. Okay, I'm just going to tap them on the table. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. And that way we're going to have a flat-bottomed shoe. And then I'm going to take a finger into both and push into both shoes. This way, when we put them on, there's something to attach them to, okay? So I've got the front of a shoe, the front of a shoe. I'm going to take my scoring sticks, score, 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 score. Oops. And then I'm also going to score the under part of his head here because that's where the shoes are going to attach themselves to. Okay, a little bit of water. And now I'm going to very gently attach these just at first. And then I'm going to try to just gently pinch them in here just so that we get a really good attachment where those two are joining. Okay, and then another one. So same thing, if your clay is cracking a little bit, you can go ahead and just grab a little bit of water on your fingers and just smooth that out. Remember, not too much water. Too much water is bad when we're playing with clay in a hand building manner. We actually use quite a bit of water if we use the pottery wheels. Okay, so now he's got cute little shoes. Now we're going to give him a little bit of an earthworm. Okay, take my clay. Roll out a clay snake, only it's going to be a clay worm. Okay, just going to make sure this little head is rounded off. And poke two eyes and a mouth because he's smiling, obviously. And then I'm just going to take this guy and create the little lines of an earthworm. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this guy around here, but like we've done before, we need to score and slip him on so he doesn't go anywhere. Some water. All right, so now my gnome has an earthworm friend and he has feet.